Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Vigor Active Health Chats. We are in a brand new studio, and this is a great day because we're in a brand new studio, and we've got a return guest, and I'm excited about it because we're going to talk about something completely different that we didn't talk about last time. I have Dr. Dustin Worthington joining me from Freeform Chiropractic, and he is back. So we're going to talk about some kind of different topics than last time. Dustin, thanks for joining me here, buddy.
Thank you.
And welcome back. What do you think, man? What do you think? It's a good digs.
I think this is fantastic. You guys have done a really good job here. I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to, I don't really remember too much what we talked about last time, but thank you for having me. It looks great in here. You look good.
Thank you.
So,
as do you.
Thank you.
Last time we talked about you, but what I remembered was that as we were wrapping up, I said, well, what would you want to talk about if you came back? And you said, well, what's going on with kind of like health of people in America, and what could be causing that. And I thought this is a great topic. I like the topic. I love talking about it too. So I want to get your take on that.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Well, in the United States, so the top 3 leading causes of death in the United States is number 1, cardiovascular disease, number 2, which is cancer, and number 3, which is like idiopathic deaths. We don't know why it's happening. It could be overdoses. It could be motor vehicle accidents, and they kind of put that all together. Cardiovascular disease, though, can be changed through lifestyle. And so I want to go over some things that I think that will really help just all the listeners, honestly, to help change their lives. The United States, out of all high income countries, we are ranked the lowest in mortality rate. And I think last year we spent $6.5 trillion in healthcare.
Right.
And if we were ranked absolute dead last, or if we're spending that much money, why are we dead last? Right. And so I think a lot of things need to change. The last couple of years, I think a lot of eyes have opened for really, really health. And the United States are really good about putting out fires, right? We really are. We're really good about emergency medicine. Our hospitals are really good about that. But in terms of taking care of ourselves long term, it's just not sustainable. And so cardiovascular disease is obviously number 1. And I think a lot of things need to change quickly.
What are some, when I think about cardiovascular disease, what are some specifics? Because people have been to the doctor and they've heard the doctor say, you have this, I even might look at high blood pressure as a cardiovascular disease that could lead to death because I don't know if I've ever described it on the podcast, but let's say your vessel's this big and then the things you're eating and the slow nature of your blood flow fills in this hole and now it's this big and the same heart is trying to pump the same amount of blood through a much smaller tube, and therefore the pressure that's on that tube is much greater. And that's why you get all kinds of stress of the heart, stress of the valves, blah, 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 right? So what are some other, when you think of cardiovascular disease, what are some other specifics that we have?
Yeah, so what you brought up to, and what you're talking about is called atherosclerosis.
Right.
And there's a book out there. I'm glad you brought that up. It's called The Myth of Cholesterol, because cholesterol is actually really good for you. You need cholesterol. Your brain functions off of cholesterol. Your hormones are made through cholesterol. And statins, which are cholesterol drugs, it's the number 1 drug prescribed in the United States. We spend more money on statins than any other drug in the world, or in the United States, but cardiovascular disease is number 1. So cholesterol, there's a big myth of that. We need cholesterol. Your liver makes up, I think, 85% of your cholesterol. The other 15% you get from food, like eggs, right? Yolk, you need that cholesterol. So I think really managing your diet. And when I say diet, I don't like to talk about diet because that's like a fad.
Yeah.
We need to eat more whole foods, right? The closer it is to living, like animals, plants, the more you should consume that, right? We eat processed foods, ultra processed foods. I was listening to a podcast actually last night, and I believe it's 77% of men and women who are military age cannot pass a military test because of that, right?
Yeah.
Because of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, high blood pressure. And there's a lot of myth about high blood pressure too, is next time if you are being put, or if you're questioning about if you should be on cholesterol, right? If you look at, or cholesterol medication or high blood pressure medication, if you look in the 1950s, cholesterol, if you had high cholesterol, it was above like 260, I think, or something along that. Now it's 200, and they keep lowering it and lowering it and lowering it, and that's not true, because we need that cholesterol, right? But with high blood pressure, a lot of people or doctors will say, "Hey, it's hereditary, or it's familial," and if that is the case, next time you go to your doctor, your PCP, I want you to ask them, "Hey, can you show me the gene that shows me that I was born with, or it's passed down to me about high blood pressure?" And there isn't one, right? The thing that's the habits, the things that are being passed down are the habits, right? And they're not being passed down. And so that you can actually change. Those are all lifestyle diseases that we can actually change, as well as eating. We need to eat more whole foods, not the ultra processed stuff that can last on your shelf for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Right.
So we've got the top now. Okay, so we addressed cardiovascular disease. What do you think is actually? How about this? Let's just be really open. What do you think causes obesity?
Honestly,
yeah. Oh yeah.
I think. Well, there's a lot of things. Number one, it's our diet, or what we put in our food, and we do not move. I love that we're in a gym right now, because the number one thing that I can recommend is movement. Right. And that is a stress. We need stress. There is good stress. Right. And so lifting weights, by the way, there's a lot better research about lifting weights in terms of for your overall health and cardiovascular training. Obviously you need that, but lifting weights, that places a lot of stress on your bones and your muscles. You need to tear those muscles. That's how you grow. Right. And so what was that question again? Backtrack.
So what do you think causes obesity?
Obesity, we are lazy. We don't move.
Well, let's go back. You were talking about, cholesterol. So if we ingest cholesterol, we want cholesterol for all the positive effects to the body, right? So, we have to eat it, and we have to eat it from fat sources, correct? Is that more saturated or unsaturated?
Saturated.
Okay, so we're
red meat.
So we're suggesting eat more. Let's talk about the myth of why obesity exists. It exists because we eat too much saturated fat, because saturated fat, when you put it in a bomb calorimeter, which they've done for how many years, says that it's 9 calories per gram, and look at the carbohydrate, it's 4. So if we're shifting that around and saying, well, maybe we shouldn't eat so much fat, maybe we should eat more fat, then the question becomes, well, if fat's not the problem, what's the problem? We have the movement. Do you think we're still on the obesity topic. Do you think we should be monitoring calorie intake? Do we think that is a problem? Or it has nothing to do with calories and it's only movement?
So that's a great question. Putting me on the spot. I think monitoring your calories, I don't really monitor my calories.
Sure.
I think certain populations should do that. It's good for them, good organization.
Yeah.
But the problem, to answer your question, is sugar.
Sure.
Okay. Sugar is what increases inflammatory response, which creates oxidative stress, which creates the atherosclerosis, right? There's a big myth. As I talked about earlier, there's a book out there called The Myth of Cholesterol. You can get it on Amazon. I forget the author. I just did a talk for all my patients actually about the myth of cholesterol and why we actually need that. But the true indicator about that for obesity, diabetes, all of this is the leading factor is going to be sugar. Okay. Because we need fat. Your brain, it's fueled off of fat, right? You actually need that.
Yeah. Interesting.
I know. I love it.
So what kind of, for people that are listening, what kind of sugar should they avoid?
Oh, I mean, anything, if it can last, all the box stuff that you see in the stores, right? I mean, nowadays you go to the store and there's all these energy drinks. There's everything under the sun. And you see those energy drinks like Bang energy drinks. And it's like, the marketing is excellent. It's like, no sugar. or zero sugar, whatever it is. And that is a bunch of BS, because there is sucralose, which is basically, it's an artificial sweetener. It's the same thing. And it's like, instead of having the real, might as well have the real deal instead of putting this artificial stuff
That's right.
into your bodies, right? And over time, I mean, we don't know long-term research about all these chemicals, right? Our bodies are just becoming one big chemical cesspool.
Yeah.
Right. It really is.
Yeah.
And especially like a Coke, if you're going to have a Coke or a Coke Zero, just go with a Coke. That is at least regular sugar, right? Zero, there's a known neurotoxin in there called aspartame.
Yeah.
And, probably most of your listeners are probably familiar with aspartame. It's a known neurotoxin.
Yeah.
It kills the sheath surrounding your nerves, and it slowly kills you. So I would stay away from all the box stuff. It can last on shelves for months, years. Stay away from that.
Yeah.
If you want sugar, just do the raw cane sugar, or stevia that comes from a plant. That's really good for you too.
And fruit, I guess, would be okay, right?
Yes, sir. So fruit is perfect because that's a natural sugar. It comes from the fruit. And so you got to be careful, especially if you're diabetic. Those are high in glycemic index. You want to obviously stay away from that as much as you can. But if you do want to get sugar, it's not added sugar, right? It already comes within in the fruit.
Yeah.
So,
and I've heard maybe there's some other elements of the fruit that help with digestion and things. I read the book of a chemist / nutritionist a long time ago, and she channeled a lot of obesity she was honed in on the liver. She said, because the liver is what processes fat. Okay. So she was never fat's bad. She was just saying whatever you could consume that's going to stress your liver is going to make it to where your body stores more fat. And I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot of what you're saying too. Okay, well, there's inflammatory nature to this stuff. And if I inflame the liver can't do its job. So therefore, I just begin to be a fat housing being, you know what I mean? I just hang on to it. It stays on me. And then there's the movement piece, of course. But you also do hear about those individuals. I don't move much, but I keep my diet how it should be, or control calories and control portion sizes of everything, and don't eat a lot of the processed sugar. And I'm just, I'm fine. Of course, we'd love to add some movement into that person's life. But, if they're getting by okay, and they're not gaining excessive weight and they still feel good, okay. So there's an interesting way to look at that. But it's just happening it's rampant. You know what I mean? It's just growing.
Yeah, that's
in our nation.
Yeah, that's the real pandemic in the United States. Is the cardiovascular disease. I mean, no one really talks about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sure. They don't. And then, well, I do have some people that focus on blood pressure a lot. They're like, high blood pressure is the one thing that, if you have it, where it doesn't seem it's not freaking me out, and there's a pill for it or whatever, but it's the closest you can get to a heart attack, I think, from what somebody told me once.
Yeah.
So interesting. So what do you think the changes should be? Got about a minute and a half to rattle through.
Okay.
How we think we should change.
I wish I had more time. Okay. So
you do episode 3.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So what should we change? Number one is, okay, if I could lay out a list. So sleep is really important. I didn't even talk about that, but that is probably the most undervalued thing that we overlook. We need sleep, right? You cannot rest. You cannot digest if you do not have sleep. You need that to grow. Number 2 is movement. Really, really important, right? And I'm not telling you need to go run a half marathon. You do not need to run 400 meters, right? If you get up and move, walk for 3 times, 15 minutes a day, that is really, really good on your body.
Yep.
So yeah, sleeping, movement, eating better, eat whole foods. That's what I would really focus on. Try and do that. It is harder to do. But I'd rather you pay the price right now in terms of pain of discipline. Hey, I'm going to eat better instead of eating like crap, because then you'll have the pain of regret later.
Yeah.
Right. You really will.
Yeah.
And then salt intake is really important. Magnesium, salt, potassium. Those are all electrolytes. You actually need that. Even if you have high blood pressure, that is really, really important for dehydration.
Sure.
Right. We need that. I like to get up early. That's a really important thing. The reason why America is also so unhealthy is because the majority of people are vitamin D deficient. We stay inside. We're under light, just artificial light. We need to be outside, right? We really do. We need to get that vitamin D. That'll increase with depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, all of that.
Yeah.
Because that's what makes you happier.
Yeah, sure.
It really does. We need to be outside. We need to get that vitamin D.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for this information, and thank you for what you're doing on 7th Street over there. You, everybody knows you now, man, in the city. So just kind of got to deal with that. And everybody in this gym knows who you are now. So we appreciate you for what you're doing. Thank you for this information. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep making a change, right? And thank you, listeners, for listening to us. And you can find Dr. Dustin Worthington on 7th Street at Freeform Chiropractic. If you have more questions for him, I'm sure he can offer more advice. It sounds like he can. So we'll see him on episode 3, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.